In this video, we're going to take a look at how non-Windows users can get started with FinalBot. The first topic we're going to cover is Mono. Mono is a cross-platform open-source .NET development framework that's freely available at monoproject.com. Mono implements the Common Language Infrastructure, which is the same standard that .NET implements. It also supports major flavors of Linux as well as Mac and UNIX, which is very complementary to the .NET framework to support the vast majority of operating systems in use today. Mono also includes development tools like Mono Development, which are great for building bots. To get started on a non-Windows operating system, the first thing you'll want to do is go to gomono.com to download and install Mono. Once you've installed Mono, you can go to the FinalBot site and download the SDK of the competition you want to compete in. This will require you to register. Once you've got the SDK installed, you'll be able to build your bot. You'll be able to build your bot in the selection of languages that are available from programming environments like Mono Develop, as well as several other development environments that are available, including F#. Once you've built a bot, you can use our Mono test client to test it against other bots that are available or against other bots that you've built. This test client is freely available and is part of the SDK and is called FinalBot Hold'em mono.exe. Finally, once you're ready to submit your bot, you can log back in at finalbot.com and submit it there. And now we can take a look at the experience running on Linux. The first thing you'll want to do when you're running on Linux or a non-Windows operating system is to head out to monoproject.com to download the version of Mono for your operating system. You'll note that there's support for a wide variety of operating systems here, and unsupported versions available for Debian and Ubuntu. Now once you've got Mono installed, you can head out to the FinalBot website, and to the FinalBot website, after you've registered, you'll be able to download the Hold'em SDK. So if we click through here, we're going to click through to the Hold'em SDK, and we're going to download the latest version, and I'm going to save that right on my desktop. Now once I've got the SDK downloaded, I can open it up and extract it out to a folder of my choosing. So I'm going to go ahead and create a folder on the desktop called SDK. We'll jump into it. I'll click extract, and now we have the folders all broken out in our SDK folder. Now this is the same exact SDK we'd be using if we were running on a Windows operating system, and many of these projects will also load in Mono Develop. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the C# starterbot solution file, and you'll note that if I navigate in, the project structure is very similar and virtually the same as what I'd see if I were running on Windows, and I'm able to look at the source code to my starter bot. Now in this case, we've got a very basic bot that only returns 0 for its bets, so it's always going to fold or check. We'll go ahead and we'll build this bot, but we're not in a position yet where we can run it. You'll also notice that occasionally there will be some warnings, such as in this case where we're not actually using the game history variable. This is mostly to show the purpose of this history property and not necessarily to do anything here. We can ignore that warning for now. Now if I step back out into the SDK folder, I can go to the test client directory. Now for folks who are not familiar with running under Mono, you might automatically think to just double-click the exe file, but you'll see a warning like this, or rather an error, which indicates that it's something that can't be run directly. That's because this executable file is a Mono project, or rather a Mono executable. And because of that, you need to right-click it and choose Open with Mono. You could also run it from the command line with Mono and then the path to this file as the parameter to it. So when I right-click and I choose Open with Mono, you can see that we have a test client available that we can now run our bots against. So I'm going to click New Matchup, and when I create a new matchup, it'll provide me with a settings dialog. Now I can walk through and decide how many bots I want to include, disable the bot timeout if I'm debugging, save a log of the matchup, which I want to do, and if I want to pause after each hand to review the actions of that hand, I can check that here. In this case, I'm just going to leave the defaults as is and click Next. And you'll notice there are 4 bots that are available, and these are the sample bots that are included as part in the bots directory of this executable. Well, what I want to do is I want to include the bot that we just built. So I'm going to click Manage Bot Locations, and we're going to manually navigate out to the location of that bot we just built, which is in the SDK folder, inside C# and inside the project itself. And then there's a bin directory, which has a debug directory underneath it. And by default, this is where the C# bot will build. So I'm going to say OK. We'll click Done. And you'll notice that it'll refresh on its own and our C# bot will now be available. So I can check that, hit Next, and then I'm going to use the FinalBot for the remaining 4 adversaries in this game. So the matchup is now going to run out in the test client, and it is actually running right now. And sometimes things will take a couple seconds to update, but you'll notice that the matchup is running through. And up here we've got a few buttons, and one of them is cancel to cancel the current matchup. And then there's also a rematch button, and this button will appear once the game is over. Now once we've finished the current matchup, we can actually scroll through and review the behavior of our bot. And one thing that is kind of interesting to see is that our C# bot did not win, but it did pretty well here. Now note that it's always folding or checking, and we can review the behavior of it very specifically if we want to. But the nature of the fact that we came in second there was probably kind of a fluke, because our bot, as I said earlier, will only check or fold. So if we run that rematch again, we're going to probably see that our bot likely doesn't finish as well this time. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see that our bot didn't really make it that far even, and was eliminated third. Now if we want to update the behavior of our bot, what we can do is simply go back into our source code and change the logic right here. In this case, I'm going to just go ahead and have our bot always raise. This is just a slight variation of its behavior, where instead of folding or checking, it's just going to try to raise every time. Now we can rebuild this project, and the neat thing about the test SDK, or the test client, is that it does not keep our DLL loaded. So at that point, if we hit the rematch button again, it'll run under the same circumstances, only it'll use our updated bits. So you'll notice that our C# bot this time, instead of folding or checking, is always going to be raising. And this is not necessarily a great behavior to have, but it happens to be very effective against the FinalBot, because the FinalBot is designed to play conservatively and will very, very often fold whenever it's raised late in the game. And so this is a quick example on how you can update your bot in place. And I recommend keeping the test client open. This way you can just continuously click the rematch button while updating the code in the IDE. Now, of course, once you're ready to submit, you can go out to FinalBot.com, navigate to your bots, click the competition that you want to update your bot for, and then go ahead and browse out to that executable. Now in the case of what we're running here, we want to go out to the desktop, and we want to load specifically just the DLL that is for our bot itself. So our bot actually built under a file called finalbot.hold'em.bot. If you see .com and .dll, these two files are files that are references that you should not include. You just want to include that specific bot. So we can now add that and submit it, and it'll be available in future tournaments. Now another important thing to note is that if we want to take a look at past performance for our bots, we can come out to the page, click through from the leaderboards or from the tournaments to get to performance of our bot, and we could take a look at a recent tournament. And in one of these daily ranking tournaments, I can now download the match results. And if I download those and save them to the desktop, what I can do is I can bring the test client back up again, and I can load the log. And if I navigate up, I can find that file here. And when I open it, you'll see that it'll actually show me the exact log of what happened in the production servers in the last matchup that I was in, and see how the performance of my bot did. So that's a quick lap around using the FinalBot Hold'em SDK on Linux. When running under Mono, there are a few important notes that you should keep in mind. The first is that Mono Develop does not offer a Start External Program option for bot debugging. This simply means that you can't F5 or build and run from the IDE itself. As a result, you should keep the test client running and simply reload your bot each time via rematch or via new matchup. Second important thing is that there isn't an attached process that works with dynamically loaded assemblies at this time, so there is no real way to debug the bots directly from within the IDE. If you want, we don't have a test harness at this time that provides full source code and a full engine for running against these. So at this stage, really the best option is to run and do debugging out either to a file or to the debug window. Another critical thing to be aware of is bots are loaded with the same security permissions as the running app in Mono. This means that unlike the .NET counterpart, When you load a bot in Mono, it has all the permissions of the original app that's running. And so if you're logged in as a super user or as a user with elevated permissions, it likely has all of those permissions, and any assemblies it loads will have those. This is due to some loading inconsistencies between .NET and Mono's implementations of CLI, but the important and most critical factor here is do not load bots you don't trust, because they will run under your permissions on the machine. So this is just a very critical thing to be aware of, and we hope you are as careful as possible when running with that. Anyway, good luck, and we hope to see lots of non-Windows competitors at FinalBot.